And welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here live from the Collaborative 3-1 studio. As you hear, we are getting it in today, thanking God for all the greatness that he does. You're listening to the Comenius Institute radio show, Warp and Woof Radio. Dr. Mark Echo, Harold H.B. Bell, every Wednesday morning making sense of this craziness, weaving the wisdom and the knowledge here between 10 and 12. What's up, my brother?
Hey, it's good to see you, man. I'm really excited about this morning. We got a couple of great guests in the house here. We've got Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson, and we're going to be talking about lifelong friendship. We're going to be talking about music. You just heard a little bit of the wind instrument sax coming in here, and that's a good sound to hear right away, first thing, HP.
Absolutely, and what we're going to do is, as we always do, take a musical break. And since I have my brother Gordon in the studio today, we're going to throw some of this Walter Beasley, Mr. Magic on, and then when we come back, let Gordon pick up on that, and then we're going to talk about how we should be grateful for all these things that God keeps doing in our life, especially friendships, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio on the Cool Groove site. Thanksgiving Radio Next.tv live up in here. Gordon Brooks making it happen. Dr. Mark Echo, take this show away, man. I'm all excited up in here. You know how it is when I get musicians in this studio.
Yeah, man, you're just all about it. And it's wonderful because the connection to the musician and to the promoter is this huge connection that's really wonderful and good. We're looking forward to all kinds of connections that we can make with all different kinds of folks all across the spectrum. We're actually broadcasting today from Collaborative 317 out near Greenfield, Indiana, which is about 25 minutes from downtown Indianapolis. You cannot miss this place. This is a wonderful place, 25,000 square feet under roof. We've got a 300-seat gala situation where we can throw events. We've got a 50-seat video venue. We've got our own studio here where we can actually not only create radio shows, but we're going to be working on video as well. And this morning we have a wonderful opportunity as we head into Thanksgiving celebration tomorrow to discuss the issue of gratitude. We've been talking about that on air all week or all month long during the month of November. And I've asked two gentlemen in today to talk this through with us. We're talking about two lifelong friends, Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson. And we've asked them in to talk about the issue of friendship, but within the spirit of gratitude, to be thankful, to be appreciative of what we have in this life, and especially in the relationships that we have with each other. So, gentlemen, Gordon and Dennis, thanks ever so much for being here. Whoever wants to take this first, just tell us a bit about yourselves, your families, your churches in Indianapolis.
Let's just start, Gordon. Wow. My churches and family. I was raised in a Methodist church in Anderson. I believe it's the oldest black church in Anderson. I want to say my great-great-grandmother started it in the kitchen of her home. It was called Second Methodist. And then they bought another church and it became New Hope. And that's where I got a great foundation outside the house, because my dad is the one that in the morning when I would catch him was reading his word in his chair up before all of us and went to bed after us. But he was a gentleman that raised me, and one of his biggest statements was, be a man, be a man. And he constantly brought it back to the Bible, not as a religious aspect, but he even, after I was spanked when I was younger, he got to the point where I needed to go to the room and read Proverbs and then come back and tell him what I read. And then if he didn't think I read what I needed to read, I had to go back and read it again. So he was planting the word, and I didn't realize all that was happening. But as I get older, I really just wish I could tell him thanks, because he was the man, that was the example. And he was better than me to the point that, I need to treat you like a man. I'm going to talk to you. And you don't have to act your color. Be who you are. Yeah. And don't look a man straight in the eye. And there are certain things that I really am appreciative that he instilled.
Sure.
And then that there is biggest foundation. And when I left home, I ran the gambit. but I always had that, and it was there. I think I learned to speak in tongues when I was 11, 12 years old, not knowing I was doing that. I was just talking with God, making up music, because I didn't want to think about the words.
Okay.
And then as I got older and started reading the word and hearing the word, I said, wow, I was speaking in tongues of men and angels when I was a baby. But I always had a feeling that he was with me. And learning more of it gives me more freedom to just be thankful and to change things that I can, because I'm a non-drinking alcoholic.
Yeah, okay.
11 years.
All right.
And there was some time where I was out there, and that was my medicine to deal with the world. Because different times I needed that false courage.
Yeah, sure.
To walk amongst the different folks.
Well, congratulations on that anniversary, and I wanted to bring it back just for a moment before we get to Dennis and give kind of a background to his life. But you kept using the word man and talking about how to be a man and to step up and be a man, and you had that kind of man. How important is it for young men to have men in their lives?
It's invaluable. They need someone to emulate, someone that's a mentor that they can look to see how a man is. I mean, to say be a man, but then also to be that example.
There it is.
I'd rather, see a sermon and hear one.
That's it.
And my dad was the sermon. One story, we had a winter coming on and a nor'easter coming through, and we lived out in the country. And he told my mom he had to go into town because, we didn't know how long we'd be snowbound.
Right.
And my mom's worried because she's not from the country. And Dad got in the car and drove to Anderson, and she didn't see him, was worried. It was dark. And she got on a cranking phone and was calling folks. No, Dolores, he left hours ago. The porch light was on, and then we hear a tractor. And my dad standing on the tongue of it with a sled full of groceries.
Yeah, these are memories that you never forget, right? These are things that stand out in your mind, and you get that picture in your brain, and that when you think about your dad being a man.
He put his life on his line.
There it is. Yeah, that's it. This is a tremendous testimony, not only for yourself but for your family and for the wonder of how you grew up and all the background to that. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your life. I wanted to move to Dennis and talk a little bit about yourself and your families, your church in Indianapolis, and maybe at the end of that, maybe begin the segue into your relationship together.
Well, as I look back, you gave me the questions a couple of days ago, and I've been trying to, sort through and go back through memories and everything, and it kind of seems like growing up, my life kind of centered around mathematics and coaching, and then I had two grandfathers that were kind of really instrumental in my life. And again, my dad was, but not to the point my grandfathers were, because I was the only grandson, and I think they put a lot of emphasis on the direction that I was going to take. And it's funny how things kind of, I look back and there's certain people that were very instrumental in my life. I remember going into my senior year in high school, and I had all the stuff to go to college, and I laid it out in front of the principal, because back then in a small school, principal did everything. He was guidance director, principal, everything else. And he looks over my papers, and everything seemed to be in order. I had the $50 with it. The one grandfather that didn't have the $50 gave me to send in with the application, and the other grandfather, my dad's dad, every time I needed some money, he'd go to the bank, and all he had was Social Security, but he had good credit, and he could always get $250 for me, and then he would pay it off out of almost nothing that he had. But he did that, because he wanted me to go to college, and I'd always heard that college was important in the direction of my life. And I remember the principal sitting there, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to coach." And he said, "Well, you got to teach something." And I said, "Well, I figured I would probably teach social studies and history." And he said, "No." He said, you're going to teach math." And he advised me to get a math degree. He'd been my freshman algebra teacher. And the only thing I knew to do was do what he said. And that's the direction that I went. And I think he saw some things in my life. I would sit around. My one grandfather liked baseball, and he had these magazines, and I would figure out how to figure slugging percentage and all kinds of things. And so I was just always interested in the mathematics of things. And that's what kind of directed me. And why did I want to coach? Well, at the age of 14, I was coaching a little league team because I had a coach that, in his wisdom, he used the high school boys to coach the little league. And evidently they didn't have enough upperclassmen, and I got to do that at age 14. I did it at 15, and then we had a little league basketball program that run in the winter because all 12 grades were in the same building, and so I coached that. So it was just natural that, I mean, I've got guys come up to me, and one works at Walmart, and he was asking me, he said, "You remember when you were my little league coach?" And he's almost as old as I am. And so anyway, that kind of got me into what was to be my lifelong pursuit. Now, the thing that made it really interesting to me is that when I became a Christian, I grew up going to church. I think the only thing that was planted in my mind when I was growing up were the hymns. He Lives, and all the great hymns of the faith, because I don't remember any messages or anything. But my other grandfather pulled me aside one Sunday afternoon on the way back to college. He said, "Can you come stop by and see me? This is my senior year." I said, "Yeah," and he was teaching a Sunday school class, but he was so feeble that he couldn't go to the class, so he was taping it. And it was on John chapter 1 to 14. And he set a spark in me. I've always been intrigued by great people, but I saw here someone that was at the top of the list. And it took several years for that to really work out. He died the next spring, but I spent about probably 4 or 5 years pursuing Jesus. Now, what I didn't realize is Jesus was pursuing me,
you. Yeah, absolutely.
All the time. And when that happened, when I began to realize what the Bible was saying, and you had verses like the verse in Colossians where through him all things hold together, then mathematics took a whole different perspective in my life. And it became a means to plant seed in my students' lives.
This is a tremendous testimony that we're hearing from both Gord and Dennis about how their lives have been changed through the testimony of Jesus and specifically through the testimony of men in their lives. This is a fantastic opportunity to, just before Thanksgiving, give thanks to the one who has made us, but also to the great people who have preceded us. You're listening to Gordon Brooks Lay It Down here for us on Warp and Woof Radio. You're listening to RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We come to you every Wednesday from 10 until noon. And the day before Thanksgiving, We are giving appreciation and gratitude to two men for their lives, but also they're giving appreciation and gratitude for the men in their lives as well as their personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We're talking to Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson. And just before break, we were hearing from both of them about their testimonies and specifically the individuals who perhaps made a difference in their lives. And I think it would be really important now as we kind of move into this concept of friendship to explain how the two of you came to become friends and maybe the longevity of that. So take that however you would like to, move in the direction that you'd like to move in, tell us a story or two, however you want to do that.
First off, I just got to say that this man was a teacher and a coach, but he was also an example, because I don't know if he knew that he was watched when he walked, when he talked, when he did what he did, and his sense of humor. And I love math, and he made it simple. And then some of his one-liners always kept a sense of humor in it. One of them was about the car. Does it roll over the tires, or do the tires pull the car over itself? And I may not have worded that exactly right, but that was one of those images. And then what's up the road? Ahead. And just different things. And then the way he made math simple, and he was a coach. Football coach for me, and he may have coached other things, but back in the day, if you didn't do the work in the classroom, you couldn't play on the field. I don't care how good you may have been. And that's one thing that I really appreciated, and I don't think back in the day you thought that you might make a career out of sports. But I did minor in math for a minute. Music, my dad bought me the first horn, and it was the one thing that I enjoyed continually. And it was when I had the chance to decide what I was going to major in at school. No scholarships for sports, but I enjoy music, and I enjoy doing it all the time. So go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a nice, lovely connection between math and music, and that would be an interesting topic to discover and discuss by itself, how important music and math are to each other.
And I use that with my students as mathematical and English. It's phrasing and finding the rhythm. And I call it the heartbeat, the pulse. And everything's got its own rhythm. And I keep thinking of the poetry that I learned from Mrs. O'Neill. We all follow the beat of a different drummer. And for people to find their rhythm and then to stay in that, there it just gives you, comfort as you're walking through.
And the pictures that you're suggesting to us through metaphors are powerful as well. They really stand out to us. I'm fascinated, of course, Dennis, by your connection to Gordon in the general sense, but also in the coaching sense. So take that in whichever direction you'd like to go here in terms of this lifelong friendship that's been sustained.
Well, I think you can say that our friendship revolves around that common experience, but over the years, we realize that thing has grown around Jesus Christ. That's what really has held us together. But Gordon's parents were fine people. I didn't know his mother that well, but I knew his dad really well. And he became, I would say, one of my greatest fans and supporters. Probably the best I ever had. In fact, I can remember setting up it was 1969, Hancock Central, which is a school that I coached at, was closing. And the final track meet, at that time I was coaching track, and for some reason, Gordon and Tom Sr. and I were setting, I don't know whether it was my car or his car, and he gave me the best compliment I've ever had as a teacher or a coach. He said, "I dream about being your assistant coach."
That's great.
Had I known that, I would have had him on the bench with me during the basketball season. Gordon's dad played on the Great Eden teams of 44, 45. The 45 team, I think, was ranked 4th in the state, and Eden probably had 25 boys in the whole high school. It wasn't a very big school. The amazing thing is I never knew about that team, and I really should have known about it because I'm not going to mention any names, but the school that I graduated from was really thoroughly beaten by them in 44 to the point that we didn't even schedule them the next year. And I had never heard about that game. And yet I never heard it from Tom's dad or several others that could have told me. And finally, a man that's been a lifelong friend for the last 30 years, he asked me if I knew about it, and I said no. So he told me the whole story. But his dad just, I remember one night somebody had something negative to say about me, and Tom Sr. set him straight, and I know why. I know that happened because Tom told me after practice. He said so-and-so was up there dissing you about something you were doing, and he said, I just set him straight that, you better be thankful that man's in your son's life. And that's the kind of friendship that we had. We didn't see each other very often over the years, but I've always cherished what I felt from him, and I think it's transferred to our relationship with Gordon. Now, the other thing I like about what we've had over the years, and I think this is very important with friends, he has shared experiences with me from his perspective that I couldn't know about, and that has broadened my vision of what's going on in this world. And sometimes we talk to each other and we don't even agree on things. But, when you have true friends, you can talk that way. He doesn't have to agree 100% with me, and I don't have to agree 100%. But in the end, we know that someday we're going to be together in complete agreement.
There you go.
And
that's a huge issue. And one of the things I think that kind of comes out of this, for me at least, I'm listening to both of you tell these stories about each other, and one of the things that is pretty obvious is that this connectivity is between you and the Lord and each other. And so that really speaks volumes in terms of the sustained friendship. You had talked earlier, I heard you both say something about this growing relationship. So, over the years, obviously it's been many years since you were in high school, many years since you were a high school coach, and that kind of thing. When you think about this kind of idea, what is it that sustains that? What keeps it going over time? You had mentioned your relationship with Jesus. Are there other principles that go along with this that interact with your friendship together?
For me, I guess it's just that we can be honest with each other. Mm-hmm. And if one is trying to BS, the other one sees it. Because, I've left the area. I've gone to New York and Texas and whatnot, and over the years, he's not changed. And I think that is invaluable because it's not, because I've had different folks at 1 minute say one thing, they've been two-faced.
Okay.
And he's never been that, that I see. And I've been able to talk to him because I've had situations to where I'd sit down and talk with him for a minute. And we were doing coffee for a while, and he talks about, we can disagree, but then still come back together because there's different things that I'm sitting back and I can be really, I can't believe you think on that, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go away for a while and come back, and it's all cool because we celebrate the friendship more than anything.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to have an opinion, and some folks are worse than the weather. Whatever direction the wind's blowing, that's where they're going to be.
Yeah. Right.
And one more statement about my dad. He was so humble. He never bragged about, said anything about. Everybody else had to speak about it. One football game, I ran from one end to the other and scored a touchdown. And while I'm thinking my dad would be proud of me, he said, Gordon, that applause only lasts for a minute.
Wow.
Back down to reality. And they wouldn't allow us to be all that in a bag of chips, but we were.
Okay.
And I never really appreciated how much gratitude I have for both of them.
That's a marvelous statement. Marvelous statement.
Well, they both did for their kids, and they didn't give them a lot of things, but they raised them with a two-parent household and to know right from wrong and to be gentlemen and to respect the name. And my mom said, Gordon, you're more of a man to walk away from a situation. So at 65, I've still never hit a man, and I'm an Army veteran. I've been hit. I've had guns out on me. But not to bring shame to the family, and then not to feel I got to beat up somebody to prove my point. And it was taught, and it was led by example, because I saw folks treat my dad indifferently because of our race. And he said, just because we work together doesn't make him my friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he would stop and help anybody.
Wouldn't matter who.
Wouldn't matter.
Dennis, just a moment ago, you said that one of the things that was important about your friendship with Gordon is that you hear things from a different perspective. What did you mean by that, and how does that impact the friendship?
Well, I'll share. Can I share the Valentine story?
Yeah.
Okay. About a year after, I'd gone to another school, and Gordon was home either on break or in the summer, and he and 2 or 3 other guys came down to where we lived down in Shelby County, and we got to talking about things, and Gordon brought up something that kind of bothered him, but he never said anything about it growing up. He said Valentine's Day, everybody bought these little sets of cards. There was 30 cards, and there was always one for a black kid. And he said he would end up with 25, 30 black Valentine cards. Now, from the white perspective, they probably thought they were doing something all right, because there was a card special for Gordon, but Gordon wanted to be just a person, not a specific type of person. And just little things like that we've talked about over the years that have opened my eyes to sometimes the insensitivity that we've had in this country. I don't think we have it. I don't see it much, because I had foreign exchange students from Africa, Ghana, and they didn't seem to be affected by some of the statements and stuff that we have here. And I think this comes from our history as a nation. And that's what I mean, that sometimes we can share these things, and he's just given me an insight. And I've got some other dear friends, kids that I taught at Washington High School in Broad Ripple, that have shared things like that, because I always found that relationships are important, but you don't get a good relationship until there's that element of trust in the relationship. And once you build the element of trust with someone, then you have the opportunity to talk to them about anything. I think the big mistake is we have seen evangelism as nothing more than presenting maybe the Romans Road or something like that to somebody, getting them to say the right thing and walking away from them. Evangelism is not, we need to be evangelistic, but we need to learn what discipleship is.
Oh, my word. There's the huge issue right there.
And that's walking with people over a long period of time. And, like Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. I'll probably paraphrase. What you're hoping is somebody walks with you long enough that they no longer follow you, but they follow Christ.
Yeah, that's right. There it is right there. This is a tremendous conversation we're having with Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson, and this concept of what does it mean to have lifelong friends. And it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, doesn't matter your age. All of those things really kind of are set aside when you stop to think about the importance of friendship. You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio on RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We'll be right back.
She's a school teacher.
Yeah. We are back, Warp and Woof Radio at RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. You are listening to a great conversation today between Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson. And, of course, we have been talking about the issue of gratitude within the context of the wonders of friendship. And so as we had the last couple of segments talking about friendship sustained through the years and why friendship is important as Christians, I wondered if there were other biblical principles that come to your minds as it relates to this friendship and gratitude for how this has directed your lives. What are some of the things that you think of? What does Scripture teach that really has enlivened how you think about these kinds of ideas? Thoughts about that? Either one of you.
I think it's just the aspect of love and forgiving. And sometimes that's been one of my hardest issues, is to really do, to love and to really do the word, to forgive. I'm always thinking about this bracelet I got from a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. I sang at his funeral in Elwood, Indiana.
Wow.
And we became friends.
Wow.
And it's one of my drinking days, and he had a Confederate hat on from the Civil War. And I said, "What's up with the hat on, man?" And we became friends. And he became a preacher over the internet type of thing.
Sure.
But one of the relatives by marriage tried to start an issue at his funeral. And I said, "Charlie gave it to me. We'll talk about after the..." Charlie's brother and sister called and apologized.
Wow.
For what, and it just teaches you then, and I sometimes believe that God's put me where I've been to make somewhat of a change, to help, to assist.
Yeah.
And again, the stories that I heard, If by Kipling, and there are certain things that aren't read, aren't spoken, and I believe the kids are the ones that are being affected by the music, by the lack of respect in that music, and by the lack of reading some good material. This new system is not always as good as we think it is.
Right. There you go.
Working with my daughter, she's a school teacher, and she's helping me not be mean. Some of the kids do the doggonest things, and but also seeing how just me showing up is blessing some of them, giving them something that they didn't have. And me being there, they change some of their attitude, and trusting that over time I'll be able to make more of a lasting effect so that they can really see who they are and be something, because they're disruptive. I don't know that they are, I don't know how to put it in words. But at a fourth grade level, it scares me what they're going to be like when they're in the 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah, exactly. This your comments about love and forgiveness, and just because we're on radio and nobody can see us necessarily, it's important to say that Gordon is African American. So when he shows up at a Ku Klux Klan funeral, and the Grand Dragon has asked him ahead of time before his death to do this, this is a big deal. So when you're talking about love and forgiveness, there's an awful lot of that has to take place in order for that particular event to actually be sustained. So, Dennis, from your perspective, from your vantage point, when you think about biblical principles that sustain a friendship, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I don't think we can really understand the value of anything without understanding the need for forgiveness. And we know from the Bible's point of view that to forgive, we've got to actually forget. And the Bible actually says that God will no longer remember our sins. And I think if we don't understand that, what's actually going on there, we're going to have a lot of trouble with forgiveness, because a lot of times a deep hurt sticks around even afterwards. And if we're willing to linger on it, can just fester there. Or what we have to do is choose to not bring it up to ourselves and not bring it up to the other person. And that's something that we don't have going on right now in our culture. Everybody's hanging on and remembering every little transgression against them, and then trying to make a deal about it later on. And if we don't get to the point of where we can truly forgive, which I think even God, you say, well, the Bible says God, he chooses not to remember. He chooses not to bring it up to us. I don't think it's, this is just my personal opinion. I think he remembers it, but because of his grace and mercy in our lives, he chooses not to bring it up. Now, when you understand the cross in terms of what he did to forgive us, then there ought to be great gratitude from our heart for everything that follows. Cicero said, I ran into this the other day, Cicero says that gratitude is not only the greatest of the virtues, but the parent of all others. And I think when we go into the Bible and we understand and read about the virtues, and see, that's something the Greeks saw it. They couldn't, put their hands on it completely because they didn't know God. They didn't know the God of the Hebrews. They didn't know the Savior, Jesus. But they understood that there was a good, and then there was bad, and they believed that gratitude was very important in their life. And I think once you understand what God has forgiven, what he's forgiven me, I have to have gratitude, thankfulness to him, and then thankfulness to all that he has put into my life, even those bad times, because we know suffering is for our good. In fact, I don't think I grow unless I am suffering.
These are important concepts, important ideas. One of the things we've been talking about all November on this program is what I call the twin pillars of life, gratitude and discipline. Gratitude because you must give thanks to somebody outside of yourself, and discipline because there is something necessary that takes place within yourself. So you give thanks to the one outside, whoever that is, for what they've done and given, and then you bear the responsibility of taking it from there. So you're absolutely right. Cicero's great quote there about the parent of all other virtues is really a huge issue. When I think about this, and Gordon, I heard you say this about your daughter, and Dennis, obviously, been a teacher for so long. How do we help students develop gratitude? How do we help students develop the friendships like you guys have with each other? How do you do that in a real practical way?
I want to clarify one thing.
Go ahead.
And remind me of that. Everybody at that funeral wasn't a member of the Klan.
Understood.
And I wanted to make sure that nobody thinks that,
Sure.
But it was an excellent time and some good friendships. Mm-hmm. But by being the example, again, with the children, by my daughter and I having a fellowship, a fun fellowship that the kids can see, but she still respects the fact that Daddy.
Yeah.
And then being that seeing how we interact with other teachers, and I sat down and made a sketch of a Batman thing for one of the kids, because some of them really act out because somewhere they're getting yelled at constantly, and they don't have a big old. Because one kid that's made the size of my hands, well, you got really big hands, but to see them and then to bring them little treats to show that someone cares is invaluable, because they don't have that interaction with other adults that tells them, you're going to grow up, you need to take charge now. This is as easy as life gets, and you're responsible because you're of that age now, and you can't blame it on somebody else. And
the example that folks are setting is an important issue.
Oh, a major issue, and what they're being, because we do not realize how they're being fed through radio, through TV, through all sorts of movies.
Yes.
And they're very detrimental. That's how they see the world. And then to be taught, because my dad taught me, when somebody pulls you over, follow their instruction. Don't immediately get the attitude. And I shared with Dennis one time that we got to watch my dad in action. He was pulled over in a country, and he told me not to turn around because somebody was following him. My brother turned around to see who was following him. And it was the man. So all of a sudden the lights go on, because evidently we're doing something wrong. But the guy goes, what are you doing? I go, we're headed home. Well, where do you live? Blah, 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 blah. License, registration. And then he had asked my dad for instructions to get back to the main road. And just some folks don't realize that there are real situations that others deal with because of the color of their skin.
Yes.
And my dad had tremendous character. Tremendous character. I could talk about him for days, but also about how many folks said, that's Tommy's boy, that's Tommy's kid, because he had earned the respect from everybody around him.
Yeah.
And
makes a huge difference.
Huge difference.
So you're talking about your dad and the importance of that and the kind of the testimony that he left you. Dennis, from your vantage point, as you think about developing students over all the years that you were a teacher, how did you go about doing that? Was that an intentional issue, or was that just kind of brought on because you are who you are?
Well, I was just happy I was making money doing something I enjoyed doing. It's just, I never really thought about that aspect of it. But I think, I saw teachers that really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. They, some really didn't enjoy what they were doing. Times you go through college, you think you want to do something, and then you get into it, and it's not what you thought it was going to be, and then you get to a point where it's really scary to get out. Now, I did it. I taught 13 years and then left and spent 9 years in sales and then went back. And I would recommend, I'd recommend all teachers going out and doing something for 3 years after they've taught a while. And they might have a different appreciation for what they're doing, why they're doing it, and but I really think it helps. The teachers that I knew that really were the most effective were the ones that had a deep faith in Christ, because they were not there just for their own self-interest, but they understood that this was a ministry, a calling that God had given them. So I think when you come to work and you enjoy what you're doing every day, you're not complaining about everything. You have the interactions with the kids, the positive interactions. I had one student, valedictorian, told me that later in the year, she said, that I've had you for 2 years now, had her pre-calculus and calculus. And she said, what I love about your class is I learn something new every day. And I was hired to teach math. It was not to preach the gospel. The only way I could preach the gospel was to live a life where I was comfortable with myself. And, I had little things that I did to plant seed in their lives. And some of the kids I can see now by looking at Facebook, things have germinated into what I would desire for them. Especially I have several young ladies that have become very good mothers. I can just tell. And one of them lives right across the street from me.
That's great.
She said, I thought your house was the house we came to for the party. We've always had a party at the end of the calculus year. And she said, I was telling her mother and her husband, she said, I think he lives somewhere here. I think I went to his house for a party. But that's kind of, I guess, what happened. Because when you gave me the question, I was thinking, I never did anything like that. I got a little story of my dad. My dad, the best 4.5 years of his life was after he got cancer in 1980s, around 82, 83. And it was terminal. I remember our doctor, who was the anesthesiologist, came out and he told me, I said, well, how much time does he have? And he said, well, probably 3 months at the most. And my dad lived 4.5 years after that. Wow. And he saw every day as a gift from God, which he'd never seen before. But what was the funniest thing, right after the operation where they discovered the cancer, I and my 2 younger kids went up to see him. And he was just sitting there in bed and joking around with the kids and talking about what he was going to do when he got out of the hospital and everything. And so we left, walking down the hallway. My daughter, who's very outspoken, my third daughter, she says, why isn't Grandpa sad? And I said, what do you mean? She said, he's going to die. And that gave me the greatest opportunity to explain why he wasn't sad. He was trusting whatever God had for him. And I think it was the first time in his life that he really did that. And the gift of 3 months turned into 4.5 years. So I think that's the way we have to live, and especially as teachers. And I think the teachers that can do that are the most effective.
The expectation of something yet to come. And, I'm reminded, listening to both of you talk here, of that great line from the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 3:2, where he says that we are epistles known and read of all men. I suppose today, if we were talking about this, he would have said, we are emails known and read of all men. We are people that other people...
RadioNext.tv. We are live from the Collaborate 317 studios, man. Gordon Brooks is in here, got a brother all excited. That was the Jazz Crusaders. And now we want to turn you on a little bit to Brother Gordon Brooks. Go ahead, man. Take it away. Save something for him, Gordon. Save something for him, baby, because look, we've got this new initiative coming up in 2018 where we're going to be performing live, have live performances out here as we brew this nonprofit incubator, and you will get to hear the likes of brothers like Gordon Brooks. Mark Eckel, take the show back over, man, before I get in here and start talking too much.
My brother HB, whose first language is music He and Gordon were just talking about waking up in the morning with melodies, lyrics already flowing through their minds. This is a marvelous thing. Gordon, thanks for bringing your wind instruments with you. I thought I'd just give you an opportunity to promote what it is that you do here. You just gave me your card. Tell us a little bit about your mission and why that's so important to you.
My mission is to help young and old people learn to live through life's lyrics, because you're always going to, well, not always, but you're going to have bad and good days, and to be able to make the best out of it no matter what happens. That's why my songs are blues, jazz, and old standards, because blues just state how life is some days, and jazz is very free, and it's in song that we stand or we move, because the melodies are what we live by. And I just like doing the mood music of different events to where folks can sit back, relax, and enjoy dinner, and then go into whatever meeting or function it is. But it's not just to have a party. Mm-hmm. I like the older songs that actually tell a story, from Nat King Cole, Duke Ellington. There was more of a message behind their music, and it left people with good, positive thoughts. I'm an Army musician, so you pump them up for war, and then you also chill them out after the fact. And it's an excellent way to make a living.
Yeah, and you do it so well. It's so much fun to just sit here and listen to this, but much less watch you play. I mean, I've always appreciated musicians and what they do. Just for the sake of saying it, I actually was on the campus of IUPUI yesterday listening to one of our Comenius students play her harp and do a harp performance, and that, oh my word, just I was talking with a person sitting next to me, and I said to her, this music that calms the savage beast, I mean, harp music, my word, it's just so genuine and quiet. And so it's kind of fun to hear you talk about chilling guys out, afterwards. That's a great thing.
Well, we had retreats and, the different NCO clubs, because you got to relax, you got to unwind. But you brought up the harp, and I thought of the Harpo brothers, the Marx brothers.
Yeah.
And that was the first spot I heard the harp, and watching him get lost in his music. Harpo, because I guess he didn't speak except to family after his wife died. And it's one of those stories that I vaguely remember. But those are the comedians that weren't too gross, but it was very funny, the different things they did. And that harp, yeah.
So one of the questions that obviously comes up here, Gordon, and I have to ask this question is, how does your work as a musician inspire thankfulness, much less friendship? How do you do that? What does that mean to you?
Just the fact that I can share my joy, and I play a number of convalescent or assisted living homes, and I'm able to play the songs that the folks want to hear that brings back fond memories. I've had one lady come up and say her mom hadn't spoken in years. And then when I started singing the songs, it brought her out of her world.
Wow.
And they come up, and after a church Sunday, a lady was crying because of me playing a little solo. And it just helps bring it in, and it's biblical, the Psalms. And it's just one way to walk through life if you got a melody going through your head.
Makes a huge difference. You mentioned the Psalms. I'm doing Old Testament overview at my church, and we talked about the Psalms here this last week and talked about hymnody and how important that is, and how important to understand that when you're talking about the Old Testament, First Testament teaching in the Psalms, these were written for people to hear first, not to read. So think about that. These are Psalms that people heard first, and they heard it in melody.
Right. And the word has a melodic way when you read it alive, because it's just like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
It's a living word. And when you hear someone speak it, it does come alive, and it takes on a whole new effect.
Yes.
Because there's power in the word.
That's right. I have to read off your place where we can get your information here, Gordon. GordonHBrooks.com, and I wanted to just reiterate that his mission is to help people, young people, old and young, to learn to enjoy living life through life's lyrics. And that last line, through life's lyrics, really matters. You know, we're just talking about the Psalms, and you just said words have a melody all their own.
All their own. And it's a flow of life because I write poetry, and one that's published is Moon. Are we racing toward the future too damn fast? No respect for the present, slowly killing off the past. Killing off, covering up things we no longer need because we have no place for them with all our other greed. Are we racing toward the future?
Wow.
And that came from standing on a overpass parking garage in Springfield, Mass., and watching the traffic go by and the Connecticut River just over the side, and there's garbage over there. And it's where Indians may have camped and whatnot, and we're just racing by. We don't even realize there's history there.
Wow.
We're too busy making the almighty dollar.
Isn't that the truth? Wow. It's really kind of fun to hear that you write poetry. My brother HB writes poetry too. You guys need to get together and do this thing, you know. Just one more time, let me just suggest that we're Collaborate 317, and we do some really great events out here. And we're going to be hearing more and more about concerts and opportunities to hear music, live music from great Indianapolis musicians like Gordon Brooks in the future. So stay tuned for some of those kinds of things. Dennis, I wanted to ask you to tell us some stories. I've asked Gordon to talk about what does it mean in terms of music and thankfulness and so on. But I wanted you to tell us some stories about students whose lives were changed by being thankful. What kind of stories could you tell us about that?
Oh, boy. That's the one question I found really hard to answer because I really wasn't looking for it that much. One of the things that I get that is really precious to me is every so often somebody will come on Facebook with some memory and just thank me for being there at the time. And that's what I've seen as I know one of the guys I taught with in the first few years said you shouldn't be in teaching if you are there just to be thanked by the kids because they're just not thinking about that right then. And I saw that. Well, I saw that one day I was working a program after school, helping kids to, tutoring them, helping them in math, and there's somebody else helping in English, somebody in the social studies. And one day, one of the guys came in. He sat down. He said, "How do you?" How are you always up? He said, "I'm just drained," and he just kept talking to me, and I was asking some questions, and he says, "I do and do and do," and he says, "I never get any thanks in return." And I looked at him and I said, if that's what you're doing it for, you're going to run out of gas.
Yeah.
And I did that day share what agape love was. And I said, and I just told him frankly, I said, I think the thing that keeps me going is I'm not worrying about their thankfulness to me, but my source is not them, but it's God, it's Jesus working through me. And I don't know how much an effect it made, but I see a lot of people burning out in life because they are looking for thanks when really I think the best source of thanks is when we can have God say to us, "Good job, faithful servant," is what we need. I mean, that's what I can see. I got better quit hitting the table. I got a text a while back from a young lady that I taught at Hancock Central, and When I left there, the last year, we were undefeated both in football and the basketball team I coached. The reserve team was undefeated, and I taught all the high school math, and the schools were consolidated, and a lot of people expected me to get maybe a better position than I was offered. And this young lady was still writing me, 50 years later, how upset she was, how I was treated. And I never felt like I was treated badly. It was just, that's the way the coaching game goes. I went to another school. I tried to tell her, this was an opportunity. And she's a Christian. I think she understood that, God doesn't allow anything to happen to you that is not in his plan, that he wants to mold you and make you through different experiences. It's just like with Joseph when he was confronted with his brothers, and he said, you intended this for evil, but God meant it for good. And I've been able to share things like that because it's when you face these difficult positions, things that happen to you in life, that it really shows who's in control. If I'm going to fret and worry and get angry, then I'm trying to run my own life. If I see things that happen as God moving me from one point in life to another, then I can be thankful to what he's doing. And by the way,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Mark is my Sunday school teacher right now. So I've been enjoying this overview of the Old Testament and
good
and the way you are teaching.
Well, thanks.
And especially seeing how the Psalms are really the literature in the Bible to change the heart through the passions that we have rather than just through the intellect. So
yeah. Oh, thank you for that. That was not a shameless plug there either. That was very lovely. Thank you for that. I'm always grateful for the thanks of folks, and kind of like you, Dennis. I have to say, I've been teaching for 35 years. I'll catch up to you soon. I know that you were at over 40 here, but I tell young teachers all the time, you have to be in this for 10, 20, 30 years to appreciate the fruit of what happens in teaching, because it's over a long period of time. We're just planting seeds. I mean, all of us who are teaching are just planting seeds. And when we realize that, and maybe I should also say we're also plowing ground, and some of that ground is cement sometimes. But nonetheless, we're planting seeds, we're getting the soil ready, and maybe somewhere down the line, 5, 10, 20 years from now, somebody will get it. I had a student come to me, this was a couple of years ago. He said, I just became a believer. When I was in your classes, I swore at you, I spit at you, I didn't like you, I hated what you taught. But he said, 20 years later now I've become a Christian. And he said, I feel so bad now because I feel like I've wasted that time. And I said, no, man, don't think that way. Think you have been given this great gift, and here is the beginning of this new phase of your life and the opportunities that you now have. So you have to stay at this for a long time, in order to see the thankfulness really kind of roll in, as it were. Gordon, I wanted to switch back over here to this musician issue and just say this. In your travels to perform as a musician, what kind of stories could you tell us about interactions with others who are grateful for their musical opportunities? Do you rub shoulders with folks who are, share your gratitude, your thankfulness in life just generally?
I'm sure in some way, shape, or form there's a number of them that do. My bass player, when I was out in Springfield, actually had a heart transplant, and we've been able to. He found me on Facebook, and we've been able to maintain touch. And when I went out east to celebrate a friend's birthday, I gave him a call, and he was able to come over and to play with.
Nice.
And I was able to talk with them. He covered my band when I came home to be with my mom as she was fading, and he covered my band to the point that when I went back, I still had a band, and we talked to God. And my piano player in New York, I found him, and his daughter found me, and he was mad at his wife because she didn't show up to a play that I was in. And I said, hey, now, she may have had an issue. Be cool, or you're in solo like me. He married her, and now he's got 2 kids, and just able to be in someone's life, and we called ourselves the Fresh Pair, and that friendship over the years is a statement. And then a couple other guys, one guy's out in Kansas. I surprised him when he got married, and we talked God, and we're all in some of those late night evenings. What do you talk about? It's you talk about your place in life, why you are who you are, and is it destiny? Is God designing your steps, ordering your steps? And those fellowships are just sweet, because he's able to teach me some Jewish things about names of folks and what they mean, to the point that you want to be careful about what you name your child from the Old Testament, because you may be putting a heck of a title on them. But even though it sounds nice, it may not be edifying to find out what your name really means. But those times of late night music and jams to where we make up and we're able to sing praises are just super
Thankfulness
special.
comes in so many different forms and fashions. You're listening to Warp and Woof Radio at RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we'll be right back. That's Gordon Brooks on the sax playing It's a Wonderful World. Great stuff. Love it. This is a fantastic opportunity to talk to 2 lifelong friends who are both believers, Gordon Brooks and Dennis Wilson, talking about friendship and gratitude the day before Thanksgiving, and we would be remiss if we didn't say out loud to everybody listening and to those who might join us in the podcast afterwards, blessings on your holiday. Enjoy your families. Have a great time with each other. Talk, laugh, sing, listen to music, have a great time with grandkids, kids, enjoy each other. And generally, I would want to say also from both of you, I think both of you would agree with this, and you kind of prompted it in my mind, maybe this Thanksgiving will be the opportunity for some people, some families, to actually forgive each other. Wouldn't that be a good thing? If we could actually forgive each other for things that maybe we need to get back together again and have that camaraderie and family life that we once knew and wasn't possible for some time but could be again. So maybe that leads us to one of these questions for all of us, and you guys can jump in on this at any point, however you want to. How should the church at large, and by the church, when I say that, I always mean capital T, capital C, all churches everywhere, universal church, all of God's people, how can we contribute in a positive manner toward gratitude? And you can take that in any direction you want to go. How does the church contribute?
Well, I think one of the things that's going to happen if the church is going to really become as effective as it should is we can't stay cloistered in our groups and only be around, I would say, those that are like us. You know, we, for the sake of society and culture and everything, we need to start building bridges and talking to each other and sitting down and really communicating and deciding that we're going to, you know, one of the things I wrote here before I came is why do we listen? You know, sometimes we listen so we can respond. Sometimes I know a guy that says if I detect any negativity in what you say, and what he meant by negativity was if you disagree with me, I just shut you off. I don't listen anymore. But you either shut people down, or we listen to respond, or are we listening to understand? That's the thing that we need to do. And then are we ready then to share the gospel? Many times that means giving our lives sacrificially for things that are important in truth.
Wow. Sacrificial giving sounds very much like a Thanksgiving theme here. Gordon, how would you jump in on this one?
Sacrificial living and giving. To empathize with so many friends of mine and family are going through so many situations. My best friend just lost his dad. And for the last 4 or 5 years, he's been taking care of him. He's got Parkinson.
Okay.
And I can't be there, but to understand the pain of this holiday, because sometimes I get amazed that God allows certain things to happen around the holidays. So every time that holiday comes up, the first thing you do is to think about that. And for people to be more sensitive to where they call them up, go give them a hug, do any number of things just to comfort their heart. And it's not always saying anything, but it's just being there. And I guess to empathize, to get out of our world, to expand it more. But to be thankful for what we got, and to understand that other folks may not, and to ask God, how can you help them make it not as painful, but a sweet pain? Because I keep thinking of memories from Barbra Streisand. Music is how you hold on to the good and you let go, because God talks about whatever is good and just, think on these things.
Yeah.
And to remember that we can direct our focus. Be the positive thoughts, positive memories, how that person used to be, the laughter, and not to think about, well, this is what they did, to let go of so much, to choose to enjoy.
You had, both of you have suggested this by your comments about the longevity of memory and how important it is to forgive and forget and to press on toward the future. When you think about this in terms of thankfulness and gratitude, and you think about the years, sometimes in this case, that somebody's loved one might have died over the holidays, how important is it to remember that these things, even though they took place years ago, how do we still come alongside people years after to remember these things and to help them through the problems that they face? Just remembering the difficulties of whatever situation it might have been, the loss of a loved one or some traumatic event.
It's bringing them to the Word, and the fact that if they were born again, you're going to see them again. But then also just, it's a piece of life. And we choose how we live it. Because, I guess with my grandchildren, that's my biggest concern right now, is that they're at the beginning stages, and for them to make some good decisions without being harping on them,
Right.
And then for me to just hold on to what's good, the good memories, the laughter, the joy, the family time, and to remind folks of those memories.
Yeah, so memory really is tied to gratitude in a very important way.
Well, even when the word says meditate on, the word's been written 2,000 years before me, and I'm meditating on a lot of that. And I like the correlation of a cow chewing its cud and the saliva coming out, because the word is juicy and it just makes you, oh, gosh. But because there's different times that I'm glad I knew the word that got me through the different times that I was going through.
And one of the words actually in Hebrew for meditate is ruminate, which comes from this concept of chewing something over and over and over again. So you even get that in cows, in your illustration here. That's a very powerful idea. The issue of memory and gratitude is a very important aspect, I think, for all of us. We have this tendency to shove the past away, and I realize that about myself. There are some things I'd much rather forget, like to move beyond, but they keep cropping up in one way or another, to one degree or another. And we have the responsibility to deal with those memories in a positive way. We're coming down toward the end of the show here, and I would like to just hear from both of you as we close out. And Gordon, I'm going to ask just before we end if you'd play another tune for us. But before we do that, how would you like to leave this radio show today? What last words would you like to give the audience?
To love freely, to forgive, to let go. Because that's my biggest battle, is to let go. Because the adversary wants to bring up where someone did you wrong. And we can only go as far as we're taught. And some folks can't be held responsible if they were taught by someone that had a lot of hatred or anger. But to love them to the point that they may come out of that darkness. Because use me, here I am, send me. I keep thinking of that. And let me be a part of what changes somebody's heart.
That's a great line. Thank you so much for the emphasis that you placed there on love. And we'll come back to you in just a second. Dennis, how would you like to end your comments today?
Well, I think we have to get back to what Gordon was saying, back to the Word of God, and we have become a feeling-oriented people, and instead of a reason and reality-based in people, and we're taught everywhere. That's the reason I started all my math classes with trying to show kids that there was things in this world that were absolutely true. And I could start out, I could show them, and then in the end of it, when I asked the question, did man make this rule or did man discover it? And they would say discover it, and then I would give them the question I didn't want them to physically answer or to think about was, well, then if we discovered it, then somebody put it there. And so I think we have to get back to we've got to have the passion and the emotion and the feeling, but it needs to follow from the truth. And I like a quote of Martin Luther King Jr., who said, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. And this is why right, temporarily defeated, is stronger than evil, triumphant. And we just need to realize, I think it's Borum, B. Borum, had a poem about the candle and the bird. And we worry about Christianity being snuffed out by a candle. But actually it's more like a bird, because when the tree rustles, the bird will fly and go somewhere else and land. And, God's purpose will never be defeated. And we just need to realize that and then be willing to do our part.
There will always be a remnant.
Yeah.
And the emphasis on unconditional love and unconditional truth, both of those things going together, is huge. Gordon, I'd really like it if you would kind of close out our last few moments here with a song. What would you like to play here to end?
In the Garden sounds appropriate.
In the Garden. There you go. So here it is, folks, to end our show today. Warp and Woof Radio on RadioNext.tv at the Cool Groove site. This is Gordon Brooks playing In the Garden.